Salve discipuli. Alright, as promised, we're going to have a quick video outlining what's coming on the quiz on Friday. The quiz is over lesson 37. There will definitely be a vocabulary section to the quiz, as always. It will be the entire dictionary entry. Okay, and you need to be careful on this. You cannot just look at the list at the bottom of 212. You must look at the word ipsa on 211, the word idem on 211. Then when you get on to 212, you have to look at all those irregular adjectives. You have to look at alias, uterque, and only then do you look at that vocab list at the bottom of 212. So really, it's more words than you might first think from looking at the vocab list. Okay, now your book should already be home with you, so you can start studying those vocab words tonight. What else is on the quiz? Well, a really important message you need to take with you from lesson 37 is that all of these new adjectives and pronouns, okay, whether they're the special adjectives or whether it's the form ipsa or idem, whatever, they all have a genitive singular ius and a dative singular of I. Obviously, that piece of information will be on the quiz somewhere. So just remember, all these new adjectives and pronouns have genitive singular that ends in ius and a dative singular that ends in I. You'll notice I'm not requiring you remember which ones fall in the special adjective category. I will usually remind you. I just need you to remember what makes them special, which is right here. The word ipsa, ipsum, the self word. Okay, you need to know that as a vocabulary word. You also need to be somewhat familiar with the chart. It's on page 211. Now don't freak out. When you look at the chart, you will realize that it is basically first and second declension pattern, which is pretty easy. You guys know that very well by now. The exception is right here, the genitive singular ius, the dative singular I. The rest of the way, it's first and second declension pattern, for the most part. It should not be hard. On the quiz, I might give you a form of ipsa, like for example, I might give you ipsos and ask you to tell me what case it is. Oh, os, that's obviously accusative. If you know your first and second declension, and you remember this little exception here, you're going to be fine. Also, idem, eadem, idem, which is right there on page 211 as well, it is a vocab word for you, but it's also a chart you need to be familiar with. This one's a little trickier. Remember that for this word, you can't look at the end of the word. You can't look at the dem to figure out the case. You have to look in front of it. So for example, if you have eos dem, you can't look at the dem part and go, oh, that's accusative. Instead, you have to look at the eos, although it does end up being accusative. That's a bad example. Let's try this. How about eis dem? If you look at the dem, you might think accusative, but you have to look at the eis part to realize it's dative or ablative. Okay? You need to be ready to handle that. This is basically first or second declension pattern with the exceptions of eus and e in the genitive and dative singular. So again, it looks intimidating at first, but for the most part, it's easy. There's one other thing that's an exception here that's worth noting. I talked about it on the video a couple days ago, but the Romans did not like the idea of MD. So when they tried to form the genitive plural of this, alright, eorum dem, they didn't like the way that sounded, so it became eorundem. So just be ready to see orun as a genitive ending, and you'll be okay. Again, the chart looks intimidating, but it's really not that bad. Alright, what's next? Special adjectives. Okay, you have that list of special adjectives on 212, but I gave you an even better one, an unus nauta acronym, in the video. So you should have that unus nauta list in your notes. I'm not requiring you to remember which adjectives are special adjectives. I just want you to once again remember that if I tell you it's a special adjective, it has an ius genitive singular and I dative singular. And remember, every one of those words is also a vocab word for this lesson. There's the unique word uterque, utraque, utrumque. It's a lot like idem, eadem, idem in that you cannot look at the last part to figure out the case. The que will not change. You have to look in front of the que to figure out the case. Okay? So you might see something like this. Utriusque. You can't look at the que part to figure out the case. You have to look at the ius, which we all know is genitive. Okay, so you need to be prepared for those as well. Alright, and finally, the last thing we need to know for lesson 37. The ablative of respect or specification. This is what I've called a naked ablative, meaning it does not have a preposition in Latin. Okay? When you render it in English, you will translate it with respect to whatever the word is, or in whatever the word is. Okay? And we had a couple examples in your text on page 212. It's worth looking at those examples. Consider those and the examples I gave you in the video. Obviously, this would lend itself to a sentence translation or something to that effect. Okay, that should give you a good idea of what's coming on the quiz on Friday. You have your book with you already. I highly recommend you start studying vocabulary. Maybe take a look at the forms of ipsa and idem, but please don't save it all for Thursday night. That is a foolish way to approach this. Okay, later, Discipuli.